They'd spent $800,000 each on legal fees, and then the rectification cost was $600,000.
Yeah, wow.
All of this could have been avoided.
Who's the one that normally ends up copying that blame that usually is innocent in this situation?
Probably the building certifier, to be honest. You couldn't pay me enough to be a building certifier in today's world. They'll always go after the one with the biggest insurance policy.
Russell, when you walk into a brand new finished house, how often can you already tell it's going to end up in a dispute? Welcome back to the OTG podcast. I'm Kai Armstrong, and we are back for another one. Last episode, Russell told us what is actually broken in WA construction. Today, we find out what happens when it breaks, because Russell does not just design these systems, he gets called in as an expert witness when they fail and when somebody ends up in court. So today is the forensic one. The cases, the failures, and the questions nobody in the industry wants to answer out loud. When it all goes wrong, whose fault is it actually? Russell, grab a coffee, let's get into it. Most people have no idea that this part of the job even exists. In plain terms, when does someone like you get the phone call? And what does an expert witness actually do?
That's a good question. We normally get the phone call, it'll either be a lawyer representing their client, or it'll be a loss adjuster from an insurance company.
So by the time it does end up reaching you, the damage has already been done, the lawyers have been involved, you're basically doing the autopsy?
Yeah, depending on where the situation is, that sometimes it's already at, like when we'll use WA for example, it might already be at SAT, which is, for those that don't know, is the State Administration Tribunal. It may be on its way to SAT. Sometimes we get involved when they take the argument to SAT, and then the State Administration Tribunal will then refer back and request that they get, or each party get a hydraulic expert witness or someone that specialises in forensic hydraulic analysis.
So talking about what actually ends up landing on your desk when these expert witness services end up actually coming in, across all of them, what are the failures that you see again and again? You know, what's the same mistake that ends up continuously happening in these disputes?
It's stormwater, it's waterproofing and drainage. A little bit now more so is the water pipe servicing or the water pipe services that they use, and we're seeing more and more claims coming through.
And you said in the last episode that we recorded that the poor man pays twice. Is this where that bill ends up arriving? Is this the poor man paying the second time?
Yeah, it is. It is to a certain extent. Whilst it's nice to have the creme de la creme of these products, everything's built to a budget and budget constraints. The plumber that's installing that, there's no issue with it. So you can argue they've used a cheaper product. It's not the case. It's literally they've used a product that's been deemed fit for purpose, only to find out down the track that that's not been the case.
And is this like the same failures that are popping up with these $1 million builds as well as the budget builds, or are there different problems at different levels? Definitely
different levels. The higher end builds, the more complicated they get, and the more complicated the services get to navigate. When you go into a sort of a multi-million dollar home, everything is no services want to get seen. So everything's boxed in, everything's concealed, which puts strain on the services. So the high ceilings mean minimal space in the roof for services to navigate their way through. And that's where we find they're bigger houses, they need bigger networks, bigger services, but yet the access gets smaller, if that makes sense. So think stormwater, you need a box gutter, and then you've got say 150 mil downpipe. Well, there's no walls in that property that are 150 wall wide, but of course we can't run them external to the building. So the plumber on site might go, well, I don't know, well, it's 150, well, let's just, put two 100s in, thinking that's going to be the solution. And sadly, that is not the solution. Just because you have that doesn't mean that's the capacity that downpipe can carry. And therein lies your first problem, where it's just like, it's a bit of an architectural services clash.
Right. So when these plans, these expert witness services cases end up landing in front of you, the question that I want answered and that we all kind of want answered, the builder, the designer, the developer, the certifier, who is actually at fault?
The fault is a combination. The industry's been let down by unlicensed trades. Like, for example, we'll talk stormwater. Stormwater once was a part of the licensed plumbing trade. It was then withdrawn, and it was now, so roof plumbing essentially, and as we sit here today, is an unlicensed trade. So when something goes wrong with that design of that roof, it's normally the architect that designed it, but the guy installing it, you could argue that it's the responsibility of the architect, and the architect could arguably say, well, I'm not a hydraulic consultant. I don't know what box gutters should be. They can have a wild stab. Ignorance is no excuse. It's horrific because it happens more in the high end. Like I said, the bigger roofs, the bigger buildings, the bigger everything, the bigger the problems. The thing we hear the most is, where the fuck were you 2 years ago when this was getting designed? Like, why are we here now? And why are we trying to retrospectively fix all this? And by the time you're trying to retrospectively adjust roof angles and heights and valleys and resize it and squeeze bigger box gutters in, like it is a shit show.
Oh yeah, I could imagine. Look, we've looked over who the blame should be put towards when it comes to a lot of these things. Like, I want to say, who is the one that normally ends up copying that blame that usually is innocent in this situation?
Probably the building certifier, to be honest. Like, you couldn't pay me enough to be a building certifier in today's world, because they essentially certify that the building's been installed and to the current NCC standards and the current Australian standards. And we still get it now. We still get a lot of certifiers come to us to say, I'm not certifying the roof, I'm not certifying the box gutter, you need to go somewhere else, go to people like us to get that certified. So it's a way of removing the legalities of them just signing off blindly thinking the architect knows what it's doing. The last man standing is the building certifier, but generally speaking, they'll always go after the one with the biggest insurance policy.
Put it simply, if you're a building certifier and you're out there and you're listening, go to a hydraulic engineer first, divvy it off, save yourself the trouble, save yourself the blame, right?
We always say get the cock off the chopping block.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Now look, who's to blame, who's innocent, who's the one who's normally walking away clean and they're walking away innocent, but they shouldn't be?
The architect.
So, because you briefly touched on the architect being to blame sometime, but are they getting off? They're walking away innocent most of the time with these situations?
Yeah, and in fairness to the architect, that you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of the time we see architects these days as well, like the constraints of the architects being put in front of them. There's smaller blocks, there's infill developments, everything's tight, everything's weird, wacky angles. So it is difficult. There's structural, there's so many compliance issues that you're trying to keep the structural engineer happy, and they've got big I-beams going through the roof, and you're trying to keep the services contractors because they want to get their box gutter in. And so you get all that. The good ones and the good architects are there leaning in saying, well, we need some advice on this.
So let's start talking numbers with this stuff. If you were to put a number on it, when one of these ends up getting to the point where you are called in, what is it actually costing, and who ends up paying this?
Depending on the magnitude of it, we've been in litigation cases that are in like class actions that are they're talking hundreds of millions. And I think that's a bit of a conservative approach. And then we've been involved in jobs that are in the hundreds of thousands. And the sky's the limit. Like, it's because the rectification side of it is one thing, but then it's like the court costs. By the time we get involved, there's dual lawyers on each team, there's certifiers, they're armed to the teeth, and we're just like, they're giving advice. But, and then you got our fee on top of that. We had one the other day, they'd spent $800,000 each on legal fees, and then the rectification cost was $600,000.
Yeah, wow.
So they spent 1.6 arguing about it, and then spent another 6 fixing it. All of this could have been avoided. So the rectification cost is sometimes cheaper than what it's going to cost to get to the bottom of it and find out who pays.
What is the most expensive mistake you've seen come out of something that did start off as just a small saving? What's something small that's ended up costing way too much, way more than it should have?
Poorly designed roofing, where it looks good, everything's, and you look at it and you go, doesn't look too bad to the untrained eye. But incorrect pitch, box gutters combining into each other, reducing in size, undersized, not deep enough, and then just incorrect overflow. So just one dedicated overflow done right, done as a deemed to satisfy a solution, could have avoided all that.
Basically just making sure that it's not all about the aesthetics. It's not about how good the roof looks. It's got to be functional as well, right? Like it's got to work. It's got to be prepared for these situations, for this rain flow, for the winter seasons when it comes around and this rain does come in. The roof might look gorgeous, but if it's not going to be functional, it's not going to be good.
It was a situation where most people, had we not been involved or had a hydraulic consultant not been involved, might have just gone, just delete those and just we'll upsize these ones either side. Happy days. Little do they know that it's actually not a deemed to satisfy. Actually, it requires a performance solution to actually have that done and do it successfully.
We've covered a lot of carnage in this industry, but we know it's not all carnage. We're going to look into who's actually getting this stuff right. So let's flip it. Who never lands on your desk? What does a builder or a developer do who is genuinely getting it right every time? What do they do differently?
Well, one thing I do know is they've had their ass kicked and handed to them. So the pain of not doing what they're now doing is obviously what lands them in court. I'm going to narrow this down to multi-residential, so high-rise multi-residential, more so over east than over in WA. But you can see that they've been punished because you're not talking one balcony, you're talking 180 balconies. So you fuck one up, you fuck them all up. The rectification for one is, so we've got to fix that one. Well, we've done all of them like that. And it is a case of now where we're starting to see in their design manual, in their design, so we call them intertrade lessons learned. So then they've got the briefs, I think Multiplex do that, Mervac do it. They actually have waterproofing details or balcony drainage details. This is what we do. This is how we do it. And this is, I can only imagine the pain that they've been through. It's easier and less painful to document it and do it right than what it has been. Something's caused that. The catalyst has got them to go from now on in. That's the detail we do, and this is the only way we do it because we're not going down that. It's an absolute shit show. And unfortunately, until you're burnt like that, some people aren't going to learn.
You mentioned earlier you would wish that these builders would be putting in 90 mils into these balcony drains instead of the 50s so the water would flow through properly, but obviously they're going to turn your way as soon as you bring that up because no one wants 130 mil balcony to sitting on top of them. So if there was one habit that you wished every builder in WA or in Australia could copy from all the good ones, what would that habit be?
Have a waterproofing engineer dedicated to the project for a start. So that goes for all your waterproofing, so your balconies, your planter box drains, your tanking of basements, like some of these buildings we're looking at a sort of 2-3 subterranean basement levels. You can see water, like they're tanked, and you can see water coming in. Like just the waterproofing is not done. Any chink in that armour of that waterproofing, you're going to be chasing your tail. Like the untamed beast, it's hungry, it wants to get in. There's room there. There's pressure coming in. There's pressure building, especially over winter. You're putting stormwater into the ground. It's the water table's rising. It's lifting. Any chink in that armour, you're going to know about it.
Basically, we're just saying fix it first. Catch it before it happens. Don't chase your tail up.
If I was a developer, I would seriously consider having a waterproofing consultant on the job to give them advice on how they should be waterproofing. Yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted, and I always say we're lucky in the industry we're in, doing these expert witness roles, and we don't love that work. It's a bit like picking over the dead corpse as you're walking through the. But it gives us a real insight into what works and what doesn't. Quite often, unfortunately, it's well after everyone's gone home that these issues are arising, and the homeowner or the body corporate or the strata and essentially the council of owners are now carrying that can. And as we speak here today, I've got no doubt that we would get a call at least once a week from the council of owners that are just that pain of experience and ingress of water and all that shit that goes along with it is they've just had enough. They just want to sort it.
Last one. It's the same question I asked you at the end of the last episode. What's something in this industry that you believe in that most people would disagree with?
That the building industry is an absolute shit show, depending on what you listen to. So whatever you believe, you'll find something to support that. So if you think you go on WA Shonky Builders on Facebook and you read through that, you would be fucking 100% sold that every builder's the shittest builder in mankind. You read through the comments, you're like, what the fuck is going on? We don't have WA's best builders Facebook page to showcase. There's plenty of good ones out there. Your attention bias is that you will find something to support whatever narrative you're believing. So I believe that there's some really good guys out there doing some really good work. So all things aside, like if everyone thinks the building industry is shit and everyone's going broke and throwing the keys, and there are some good ones out there and doing a good job.
Yeah, no, 100%. No, I agree. And look, it's the content that we end up seeing a lot of the time is what the user, the consumer wants to see is going to be the things that go badly because that's just what gets our attention. You're not going to see the videos online about what a builder did good and where this went right because people don't watch that. People watch what went wrong, how it went wrong, who's to blame for it.
Yeah, and I do enjoy watching the reels or the TikToks or whatever you like of people showcasing their work and going, check this out. And then you go to the comments and you're like, you just see the comments, what about this? That's going to be fucked. Didn't think about that. And, so kudos to those that are willing to showcase their good work. I'm all for promoting the good guys out there doing a good job because they certainly don't deserve to be painted with that same brush as the ones that are doing a shit job.
100%, man. Look, that's our forensic episode. If you've ever wondered who is really to blame when a building goes wrong, now you know who has to decide it. Hit follow for the monthly drops on whatever is actually worth talking about in Western Australian construction. Next month, we're going inside the plumbing code changes, the ones quietly reshaping what every builder is allowed to do, and what happens when they get it wrong. Sounds good. Let's see you next month.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, mate.
Bloody oath.
See you then.